Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a really fascinating, completely invisible process that dictates exactly how you interact with the political world around you. We often think of our political stances as these highly personal, deeply logical conclusions that we've arrived at all on our own. But actually, the research tells a very different story.
So let's just dive right into this by asking a simple, if maybe a little uncomfortable question. Did you actively choose your political identity, or was it handed to you? Seriously, think about it. When you cast a ballot, or support a policy, or even just feel a sudden surge of patriotism, how much of that is your independent, adult brain working, and how much of it was literally programmed into you before you even knew what a government was?
To figure that out, we're going to trace the entire life cycle of your political development. Here's our agenda. First, what is socialization? Second, the goals of socialization. Third, the agents of influence. Fourth, the stages of development. And finally, the impact of systems. Let's get started.
Section 1. What is political socialization? Defining the process.
Look at the exact language political scientist Gabriel Almond uses here. He calls it a process of induction. And that's exactly what it is. It's this incredibly smooth, almost imperceptible way that we learn societal values and norms. Basically, you're internalizing the rules of the game without ever consciously questioning if the game is fair. It's the mechanism that takes a mentally naked infant and turns them into an adult fully clothed in a distinct political personality way before they ever step foot inside a voting booth.
Section 2. Goals of socialization. Maintaining stability.
The ultimate goal of all this? Stability. A political system can literally only survive if its citizens actually accept its rules. The whole objective is to transmit political values from one generation to the next. The source material draws a really fascinating comparison here. In developed nations like the US or the UK, citizens are trained and habituated to use constitutional, democratic means to bring about change. The socialization is super deep-rooted. But in developing systems, like India during its earlier post-independence decades, the process is still kind of permeating through society, and that can sometimes lead to agitation politics or conflicts tied to regional and caste loyalties. So the smoother the socialization, the more stable the nation.
Section 3. Agents of influence. Who shapes your mind?
These right here are the 6 main agents of political socialization: the family, educational institutions, voluntary groups, mass media, political parties, and the government. They work separately, or sometimes a few of them team up, to shape your worldview from the exact moment you're born. And frankly, the success of any political system depends heavily on how effective these 6 agents are at doing their jobs.
Let's start with the very first agent, the family. As Alan Ball points out, the family is your ultimate foundation. It's literally your first window to the outside world and your very first contact with authority. Parents pass down their outlooks to their kids, sometimes overtly, sometimes totally covertly. Our source points out a prominent historical example of this, the Nehru family in India. They produced leaders spanning 4 entire generations: Motilal, Indira, and Rajiv Gandhi. Their political trajectory was deeply, fundamentally influenced by their family's early social, economic, and cultural environment. So, the way you think politically was probably anchored right at your childhood kitchen table.
But, you don't stay at home forever. As you grow up, that smooth indoctrination from your family gets challenged. Schools step in to mold your early character, planting new beliefs firmly into your personality. And then comes higher education. When a student enters college, usually around that super impressionable age of 16 or 17, they really start to use their own judgment. Universities spark this vigorous political awakening and debate. Students join voluntary groups, student unions, professional organizations. And this is where they get hands-on training in democracy. They fight elections, they protest, they form executive bodies. It's a total game changer.
And that leads us to the sheer power of our next 2 agents, the mass media and political parties. The source gives us some really potent historical examples from India to illustrate this. For instance, print media, papers like the Hindu and the Indian Express, relentlessly exposed the Bofors scandal, which radically shifted voter views and massively influenced the 1989 elections. On the flip side, political parties raised defining national issues to capture the public's imagination. You had Janata Dal leader VP Singh championing the Mandal issue for backward castes, or the BJP raising the Ayodhya controversy. These are not just news events. They are active agents aggressively socializing the public and shaping political orientations on a massive scale.
Section 4. Stages of development. A lifelong process.
Now, a major takeaway from all this research is that political socialization is definitely not just a childhood phase. It is an ongoing, continuous process from birth until death, and it shifts pretty dramatically as we age and encounter new realities.
That being said, it does start a lot earlier than you might think. Political awareness actually kicks in around age 3, and it's well established by age 7. But in childhood, this attachment is purely emotional. Kids develop these simple emotional bonds to national symbols, like the flag, a police uniform, or prominent historical figures like Mahatma Gandhi. They don't really grasp abstract concepts yet, right? Things like voting, democracy, or public policy. It's really just about loyalty, obedience, and a basic instinctual sense of patriotism.
But entering adolescence, roughly ages 12 to 18, everything changes. Knowledge increases and teenagers begin questioning the authority they just blindly accepted as kids. The source actually notes that in the United States, children between 11 and 13 start showing marked development in their political attitudes. This is a critical shift. We move from purely emotional evaluations of our leaders to critical intellectual judgments based on their actual performance.
Then comes adulthood, from 18 to 60. Education ends, you get the right to vote, and reality hits hard. You're working, you're paying taxes, looking for housing, and you're feeling the direct, everyday effects of public policy. All of this real-world experience firmly cements your adult ideological convictions. Finally, in old age, 60+, the research suggests people tend to lose a bit of interest in active public life. They often become either more conservative and less appreciative of a changing order, or they become highly critical and nostalgic for the institutions of the past.
Section 5. Impact of systems. How regimes shape you.
Zooming out, depending on the political environment you are born into, your socialization takes radically different paths. In an open, democratic society, pluralism is the norm. Divergent interests and dissent are totally allowed. You learn the value of a free press, the rule of law, and you exercise your franchise as a free person. But in a totalitarian system, socialization takes on a very dark, entirely different shape.
In closed systems, political socialization is not some natural, evolving process. It is forced, suppressive indoctrination imposed directly from the top down. The rulers aim to control absolutely every aspect of an individual's life. The source explicitly points to figures like Mussolini, Hitler, and Stalin, who used the power of the state to totally deprive citizens of any right to dissent. In these systems, questioning the state doesn't just mean you disagree, it has fatal consequences. Dissenters are ruthlessly liquidated. The agents of socialization we talked about earlier, they are completely weaponized for absolute control.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to look at this final question. We've seen how the family plants the seed, how schools and media water it, and how your life stages and the broader political systems fence it all in. These invisible forces of political socialization have literally been operating on you since you were 3 years old. So take a second to reflect on the agents that molded you, those emotional bonds you formed as a kid, and the intellectual shifts you made as an adult. Are your political beliefs truly your own independent creation, or are you exactly the citizen your society designed you to be? Thanks for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning the world around you.